If we consolidate suppliers, what's the savings there?
So should we go with the 467 horsepower?
Or is the 423 enough?
Good question.
You ask a lot of good questions.
I think we should move you into our new fund.
Sure.
Okay.
But are you asking enough about how your wealth is managed? Wealth management at Charles Schwab.
I thought Activia wasn't for me until I realized how much our digestive systems handle during winter. 90 stressful days juggling hectic schedules. Over 40 meals of heavy comfort foods like baked mac and cheese. No wonder after all that, our digestive systems can act up. So try the Activia 2-week challenge.
Enjoying Activia twice a day for 2 weeks may help reduce the frequency of bloating, gas, discomfort, or rumbling.
Try it. It works in 2 weeks or it's free.
You're an AT&T small business expert.
Sure am.
My staff could use your help staying in touch with customers.
AT&T can help you stay connected.
Am I seeing double?
No, ma'am. Our AT&T buy one, get one free makes it easier for your staff to send appointment reminders to your customers.
And share promotions on social media?
You know it.
Oh, now I'm seeing dollar signs.
You should probably get your eyes checked.
Get one, babe.
Optometry humor.
Right now, get up to $650 in credits to help you switch to AT&T.
Allergy medicine not working? Try Nasacort for effective relief. It relieves the worst nasal allergy symptoms, even congestion. It's non-addictive, scent and alcohol-free, and has no harsh taste. For 24-hour allergy relief, Nasacort.
From the dairy farmers of Fairlife, this is our promise. We start with delicious, creamy, real milk that's been ultra-filtered so Fairlife has more protein and only half the sugar and never any artificial growth hormones. At Fairlife, we believe in better.
And we're back with our Powerhouse Roundtable in just 2 minutes.
The future belongs to the fast. And to help you accelerate, we've created a new company. One totally focused on what's next for your business. A true partnership where people, technology, and ideas push everyone forward. Accelerating innovation. Accelerating transformation. Accelerating next. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise.
Frustrated with your overactive bladder medicine not working? Can't handle the side effects? Botox treats symptoms of leaking, going too often, and the strong sudden need to go. Ask your urologist if Botox can help calm your bladder and reduce your daily leakage episodes. The effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, loss of bladder control, or muscle weakness can be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Don't take Botox if you can't empty your bladder on your own or have a urinary tract infection or UTI. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, fatigue, UTI, painful urination, and difficulty emptying your bladder. Tell your doctor your medical history. Muscle or nerve conditions, medications including botulinum toxins, antiplatelets, and blood thinners may increase the risk of serious side effects. Ask a urology specialist if Botox can help calm your bladder. Visit BotoxOAB.com and learn how Botox can be a low-cost option.
On July 23rd, our home was destroyed.
You don't realize what you have in a home until it's taken from you.
Belfour arrived to help us pick up the pieces.
At Belfour, we restore more than property.
Your brain changes as you get older, but Prevagen helps your brain with an ingredient originally discovered in jellyfish. In clinical trials, Prevagen has been shown to improve short-term memory. Prevagen, the name to remember.
We're non-stop. You gotta have our extra protein. Oikos Triple Zero Greek non-fat yogurt has 15 grams of protein, 0 added sugar, 0 artificial sweetener, and 0 fat, and 0 holding me back.
Oikos Triple Zero. Be unstoppable. Continuously evolving with the needs of the user. Accessible through the cloud
to new markets all over the world.
The business model is completely different.
Yes, it is.
This totally changes the way we recognize revenue.
And where? Think about all those tax jurisdictions.
How are we going to handle all this?
We aren't.
People who know BDO.
And speaking of Trump, he's on track to become become the Republican nominee. So to all of you voters out there who have thought for years, I hate Hillary, I could never vote for her, to you I say welcome. Because I've got clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right, and here you are stuck in the middle with me.
Saturday Night Live having a little fun with what could be an epic battle in the fall. Let's talk about it on our roundtable with Matthew Dowd, Cokie Roberts, Democratic strategist Van Jones from CNN, and Ana Navarro, Republican strategist. And we got to begin with trying to sort through this week, Matthew Dowd, between, like I said, Super Tuesday, big Donald Trump sweep on Super Tuesday, that debate. He was piled on. Mitt Romney came out. And then last night, it seemed like Ted Cruz making some headway. So where do we stand at the end of the week?
Well, I think the biggest, if you want to look at last night and what it determines going forward, the biggest loser last night was the Republican establishment in the course of this. They lost badly. Marco Rubio finished 3rd or 4th in every single state. They put all their chips and money in Jeb Bush. He's gone. They then put all their money and chips into Marco Rubio, and he's now on the verge of being gone. He has Florida as one last stand in the course of this. I think, and as you look at this, the course of this, as the voting has taken place, establishment, the outsider candidates have gone from 50% of the vote to 60% of the vote to 70% of the vote. And in Louisiana, they were 80% of the vote in Louisiana in the course of this. I think this race is becoming, right now, a 2.5-person race. So it's...
Who's the half?
I don't think Rubio's the half. I think John Kasich's the half, because if I think John Kasich has a better chance of winning Ohio than Marco Rubio does of winning Florida.
First of all, I do agree with you that last night was a very bad night for Marco Rubio. I think getting in the gutter with Donald Trump really hurt him. You don't out-mudsling Donald Trump, and you took the most optimistic, poetic-speaking orator of the Republican Party, and you turned him into Beavis and Butthead. It did not work. But I do think that Marco is much better organized in Florida than people think. I don't think the gap is as big as some of the polls reflect. Florida is a huge state with a lot of absentee ballots. Organization matters. Marco should and has the best organization.
But where does that leave it, Cokie Roberts? He's behind right now. If Marco Rubio wins Florida, John Kasich wins Ohio, neither one of them can get a majority of delegates.
Then we do head to the convention. That's what happens. If they start winning winner-take-all primaries, then we start heading to the convention. And Glenn Beck was very interesting about that, because the truth is, if Donald Trump has a vast number of delegates and the Republican Party tries to find some way to take it away from him, there will be civil war. And, the truth is that they have only themselves to thank for this. Forget their policies. That's one whole set of things. But the fact is that Donald Trump was awful about Mexicans, awful about Muslims, awful about women, awful about the disabled, and they just kept their mouths shut. It took the Ku Klux Klan to get the Republican leadership to start
And it brought Mitt Romney out this week, Van Jones. There does seem to be, depending on how you look at it, some evidence that Donald Trump was slowed down by the events last week. He didn't meet his poll numbers in any of the states last night. He actually lost, even in Louisiana, lost to Ted Cruz on the votes taken yesterday by a little bit.
Well, the great irony is, even though everybody says, Mitt Romney can't affect anything, this can't affect anything, it actually turns out that when everybody starts firing at a target, that target suffers. The problem is you wait till March to do it. Listen, you have a full-on phenomenon now around Trump. This is not just a candidacy. This is an insurgency with deep authoritarian feeling to it. Once you've got that going in a country, any country, that's dangerous.
I want to bring that to Matthew Dowd. Hold on a second. I want to bring that to Matthew Dowd. One of the things we've seen from Donald Trump, though, over the course of this campaign, he has proven to be resilient, to take a hit and to come back. And this will be another test right now. There's been a pile on. Do his voters bring him back, or is this the beginning of a spiraling down?
Well, no, I don't think it's the beginning of a spiraling down. I think what Donald Trump has been a powerful candidate in this, but he's a deeply flawed candidate in the course of this. And I think Donald Trump at every moment in this race has had an opportunity to rise faster and gain momentum and start winning going away. But because of his own mistakes, his lack of discipline on certain things, his veering off into candidacy, keeps his cap down in the mid-30s or maybe even 40, and that's a problem in the course of this. I think if Donald Trump had conducted himself and spent some time learning some policy and maybe didn't say some crazy things in the course of this, Donald Trump, he would be running away with this. He's beginning to cap himself, but in a race that looks like it, the way it looks like, he can go in, he can pick up a lot of delegates. Is he still the favorite? He's still the favorite.
You know, but now the difference is that Ted Cruz is the strong second favorite. While Marco Rubio and Donald Trump were engaged in a Yo Mama is so dumb contest for the last 2 weeks, it's not been John Kasich that emerges as the adult in the room, even though he has been, because nobody remembers he's there. It's been Ted Cruz. He had a good debate last week. He's going all in Florida. But he's opening up 10 offices. He's going to be spending a lot of time there. Let me tell you, it's not about him winning Florida. It's about him keeping Marco.
But that's the question I have. I mean, if this strategy works for Ted Cruz and he hands the state to Donald Trump, what then?
Well, then Donald Trump becomes the nominee. I mean, if
but he's gotten rid of Marco Rubio in the process.
If he gets Florida and Ohio, it's over. But if Kasich takes Ohio, then, you know, we're still fighting this thing. But the fact of Cruz is the other reason we are where we are. Because the leadership so dislikes Ted Cruz, but also thinks that he will bring the party down to disaster, that they've allowed Trump to fester on.
Well, here's what, in our party, the Democratic Party, you have a rebellion. It looks like, if you look at the math, that our rebels will probably lose. The question is, do they stay in the party and support Hillary or not? In the Republican Party, you have a rebellion where the rebels are going to win. The question is, will the establishment stay? And what's such a remarkable repudiation of the establishment is, usually if you have a rebellion and the rebellion splits, the incumbents win because you can smash two. Either of the rebel group movements now can win. The Cruz movement is bigger. Right. The Trump movement, both are bigger than this.
Here's a way to put a number on it, though, Matthew. That I think if you look at 538, they've gone through all the exit polls. Only 49% of Republican primary voters are satisfied with Donald Trump. 79% of Democratic primary voters satisfied with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, and there's less of a satisfaction if you go look in the numbers with Ted Cruz than there actually is with Donald Trump. I talk about Donald Trump's flaws. Ted Cruz had some serious flaws. And his path, I mean, this has been the easiest part of his path, and he's still in second place. He goes into states.
Also, but you know, everything in life is relative.
I want to say one more thing. The part of the party's problem is that over the last 20 years, blue-collar voters have made up who the Republican Party is. And what's happened in the course of this, the elites...
This is an ABC News special report.
Good afternoon. I'm Dan Harris at ABC News headquarters in New York. We are interrupting regular programming to bring you some breaking news. Former First Lady Nancy Reagan has died. She was 94 years old. Mrs. Reagan had been living in Bel Air, California. She had been in failing health in recent years. Nancy Reagan once said her life really began when she met her husband, the actor and future politician and future president, Ronald Reagan, in 1951. Their remarkably close relationship over the next 5 decades was seen by many as a modern love story, a model love story, especially during their first years as the first family of California and then as president and first lady from 1981 until 1989. Mrs. Reagan returned to public life after her husband announced he had Alzheimer's disease in 1994. She advocated for millions of others and their families suffering from the effects of that disease. But in the past several years, her few public appearances centered mainly on keeping her husband's legacy alive, as well as meeting with the leaders of the Republican Party who continued to seek her out. Many of you may remember moments like these, the former First Lady paying a quiet visit to her husband's grave, as she did every year on the anniversary of the president's death. ABC's Cecilia Vega looks back now at the extraordinary life of Nancy Reagan.
At the 1996 Republican National Convention, Nancy Reagan made an emotional tribute to her husband, stricken with Alzheimer's disease. It moved the delegates, it moved the nation.
So let me close with Ronnie's words, not mine.
And it showed that part of her legacy would be how she carried on his.
Never forget your heroic origins. Never fail to seek divine guidance. And never lose your natural, God-given optimism.
It was that optimism that carried Nancy and Ronald Reagan to the end. Ronald Reagan died June 5th, 2004. Nancy shared her grief with the nation. Mrs. Reagan's journey began as Anne Frances Robbins in 1921. After graduating from Smith College, she became an actress, appearing on Broadway and in several Hollywood films. On March 4th, 1952, she married Ronald Reagan. The Reagans would make only one film together. It would be her last. In 1956, Hellcats of the Navy. The new Mrs. Reagan soon shifted roles to wife and mother, to Patty and Ron Jr., and stepmother to Michael and Maureen, from President Reagan's first marriage to actress Jane Wyman. Maureen died of cancer in 2001.
I, Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan was sworn in as the 40th President of the United States in 1981. Nancy right there by his side. She brought some Hollywood glamour back to the White House, but her style as First Lady wasn't always appreciated. She was criticized for accepting $1 million worth of designer dresses and expensive china. Mrs. Reagan was always fiercely protective of her husband. After he was shot in 1981, she became obsessed with his safety. One former chief of staff revealing that Mrs. Reagan consulted an astrologist to plan the president's schedule. She even coached him on what to say to reporters.
Doing everything we can.
As First Lady, she also campaigned against teen drug and alcohol abuse with the now famous slogan, "Just Say No."
All of us thank you and President Reagan for helping us just say no to drugs.
In later years, she turned that activist streak to a cause many Republicans disagreed with: stem cell research, which could someday help others with Alzheimer's.
The Republican Party was not the center of her life. Ronald Reagan was. And she saw an immediate application, potential application of stem cell research to the person she cared about most in all the world.
Her public perception has undergone a profound transformation over the years. Widely viewed in her final decade as a leading political light, she was endlessly courted by Republican contenders, constantly cited as a paragon of genuine conservative virtue. But what Nancy Reagan will be most remembered for? The essential cause from which she never wavered, providing iron strength and absolute devotion to her husband.
Oh, my dear, our love is here to stay. Together we're going a long, long way.
And they did go a long, long way. Nancy Reagan, dead today at 94. Let's bring in ABC News Chief White House Correspondent Jonathan Karl. John, good morning to you. I just wonder if you could tell us just a little bit more about the influence she had within the Republican Party, especially in these later years and especially at this moment now where the Republican Party is in such tumult.
The timing is just incredible, Dan. You know, Nancy Reagan, as you heard Cecilia refer to in her story, was often controversial as First Lady. She fought with some of Reagan's top advisors. She was the guardian of Ronald Reagan above all things, jealously protecting him from anybody who she saw would anyway cause him any trouble at all. In the years since he died, she became the symbol, the protector of the Ronald Reagan legacy. And when you think of the towering figure that Reagan is and has been in this party, this has really, over the last several decades, become the party of Lincoln and the party of Ronald Reagan. And it was Nancy Reagan who carried that flame, kept that flame lit. Every presidential election cycle, the Republican candidates for president would come out to the Reagan Library. There would be, there would be a debate there, personally invited by Nancy Reagan. In the years in between the presidential election years, being invited to come and give a speech at the Reagan Library at the invitation of Nancy Reagan was a sign of affirmation. She always stayed neutral in the primaries, but she was the guardian of that legacy. And the idea that she is dying on this day, just as the Republican Party is facing its greatest crisis really since Abraham Lincoln accepted the nomination back in 1860, is really quite remarkable.
It is. For what do you think she will be most remembered? Many people of our generation remember Just Say No, but for what do you think she'll be most remembered by history?
I think she'll be remembered as the one who carried the flame of Ronald Reagan, that guarded his legacy, that kept his legacy alive. She was an active first lady. Obviously the Just Say No campaign was the thing that she became known for most as first lady, but she remained a major figure long after Ronald Reagan left the White House, because as he left the White House, obviously struggling with Alzheimer's, she was the one who was the public face of the Reagan legacy, of Ronald Reagan himself, and also the way she handled his struggle with Alzheimer's in the remaining years of his life, when he fell almost completely out of public view. And she was the one who spoke for Reagan. She was the one who was the guardian of that legacy.
John, have we heard from her at all? Had we heard from her in recent months as the Republican Party became obsessed with sort of internal battles over the role of Donald Trump? And is there anything that she said in the past that would allow us to extrapolate to what her opinion of the situation might be?
We had not heard from her. You know, this last debate at the Reagan Library earlier on in this crazy primary cycle, it was once again the invitation from Nancy Reagan, but in poor health. She was not present. She's been struggling in terms of her health. And I'll tell you, it's one of the questions that I know I have had and so many people have had. What would Reagan think of what was going on here? What is Nancy Reagan thinking about what is happening to this party, ultimately to the legacy of Ronald Reagan? And you know, unfortunately, 94 years old and in ill health, we did not hear from Nancy Reagan in her final months.
John, stand by, because I want to bring in Bob Colacello now as a special correspondent for Vanity Fair. He has written extensively about Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan and their relationship. Bob, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Thank you for joining us by the phone. Bring us a little bit, if you will, into the emotional core of her relationship with Ronald Reagan.
Well, Nancy loved Ronald Reagan, I mean, with her whole being. You know, theirs was a total meeting of the minds, and it was a romantic relationship. It worked on every level. She had a lot, you know, that love gave him the confidence and support and optimism, really. After his mother, she was definitely the person who he was closest to by far, and they were very much a team. Starting when they married in 1952 and were both out-of-work actors. 14 years later, he was governor of the largest state in the Union. She paved the way in so many ways. She sought out the wives of powerful Republicans in California who formed this kitchen cabinet, who made his run for governor possible. She was thought of as behind the scenes as the personnel director of every Reagan operation campaign, including in the White House. She made sure he had good people around him, and when they weren't good, she was the one who had to sort of organize their exit, because Ronald Reagan didn't like to fire anybody. He was too nice a guy. One cannot exaggerate how important her role was as First Lady and in his entire political career.
Yeah, it's hard to forget that really indelible moment where he's facing the press and she feeds him the line and he repeats it. I just want to read here a tweet from Ronald Reagan's son, Michael Reagan. He says, and I'm quoting here, "I'm saddened by the passing of my stepmother, Nancy Reagan. She is once again with the man she loved. God bless." And back to you, Bob Colacello. Can you give us a sense of the impact that Ronald Reagan's health troubles, his struggles with Alzheimer's disease, had on his wife, Nancy Reagan?
Well, she was devastated, you know, by the news. But she described to me when he was told by the doctor he definitely had Alzheimer's, how he went right to his desk and wrote that beautiful letter to the American people. She never left his side. She would come to New York when he was still not so bad for a day or two, but she called him every night at 10 o'clock New York time. In the middle of a dinner party, she would call him. Once he really took a fall at age 90 and then deteriorated much more, she basically never left the house. I mean, she went to lunch at the Bel Air Hotel around the corner and, couldn't wait to get home to him. And I think Patty Davis, their daughter, confirmed that what Nancy had told me was that just before he died, he had been in a coma, and he opened his eyes and he looked at Nancy. And it was like he was saying goodbye. It's one of these love stories that's almost unbelievable. I've done that, but it's really true. The whole thing is true.
It's an incredible love story, and it played out in public for so many years. We have just a moment left. I wonder if you might comment a little bit on what John Karl was talking about a moment ago, about what Nancy Reagan might think about what's happening right now in the Republican Party and the internal warfare that's erupted over Donald Trump.
I think she'd be appalled. I mean, we spoke just last week, but it was a brief talk, and we didn't get around to talking about this. She was very politically aware. She always favored the more pragmatic and dignified kind of leaders, politicians like a George Shultz or a James Baker. These were her allies in the White House. Ronald Reagan had the 11th commandment, which is Republicans do not speak ill of each other. I think what's going on, this kind of circus, I can't see it pleasing her. It's just, she always took the high road, and so did her husband. And I regret that I wasn't able to actually get her opinion on what's going on, but I assume she wasn't too thrilled.
Yeah, I think you are not alone in that assumption. Bob Colacello, I want to thank you for your insight and expertise on this day when we are marking the passing of the former First Lady Nancy Reagan. She died at age 94. She was born on July 6, 1921. Mrs. Reagan had been living in Bel Air, California, as we mentioned earlier, and she had been in failing health in recent years. Our thanks again to Bob Colacello and John Karl. We will be tracking this story all day right here on ABC News.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Your boy named Jesus.
It's a spectacular movie that should not be missed.
Keep your power inside you until your Father in Heaven shows you the time to use it.
The Young Messiah, rated PG-13.
Hi, I'm Joel Osteen with my friends John and Sue Ellison. They pastor Lakewood Chapel. I hope you'll stop by when you get a chance. I know you'll be blessed, encouraged. They'll help you become all God's created you to be.
Thank you, Pastor Joel. You and Lakewood Church have been such a blessing to our congregation, and we're excited